Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about apologies. Join us as we learn our apology languages and how this knowledge helps us connect with those around us in a more meaningful way. Let's get started. Listeners, today we're talking about apologizing. And I think all of us have an idea that however we apologize is the correct way to apologize. And I hadn't really given a lot of thought to that, but then my daughter, she sent me this quiz. So today we are talking about apology languages, and it's similar to the love languages, also by the same author, Gary Chapman. And she sent me this quiz, and it's basically figuring out what your primary apology language is. And many people don't realize that, like love languages, there are apology languages for people too. And it's important to understand the apology language of the ones around you to be able to effectively apologize when you're in the wrong. So, Julie and Mindy, I sent you this topic one night and said, hey, I think this would make an interesting discussion. And what did you think?
Well, at the very first initial look at it, I kind of bristled at it thinking, was this even biblical? Like who wrote this thing? Because I think, well, forgiveness is more about in our own hearts. Like, it doesn't matter if we get an apology. Like, we're not told we need to have an apology to forgive. And then I thought, okay, I understand that this is just a tool to help you get along better in your relationships,
Right.
So I had to kind of get past that. And then it made more sense when I looked at it deeper.
Yeah, it was kind of like at first, it was a little confusing to think about, I'm like, what do you mean by that? Apology language, what is that? So thankfully, Marie sent us the quiz. And after you do the quiz, you can catch on, what it's talking about. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like a light bulb went off because in early marriage, Bryce and I'm just going to go ahead and say we speak different languages, but I could remember back to just feeling like, I think he's apologizing, but he's sure not saying what I think he needs to say, or, I'm not doing what he thinks I need to do for us to become back to unity. And then it was funny because I sent you guys some things. I started seeing this apology language in everyday life. And so it was a light bulb moment. So I think this is very, very good information for us to talk about.
Yeah. So basically there is an apology quiz, and I'm just going to read for listeners just a few of the questions so you can kind of get the gist of what they're asking you to do. So the first question is, it's more meaningful to me when I hear someone say, I deeply regret having embarrassed you like I did, or our friendship is really important to me. Will you please forgive me? And so you have to choose one of those two. And when my husband went to take the quiz, it was almost impossible for him because he was like, these mean the same thing. I don't care which one of these someone says. Like, to me, these sound the same. And so I could see how some people, like, this is just too subtle. Or here's another one. Okay, it's more meaningful to me when someone says, okay, I admit it, I made a big mistake. Or do you want them to say, I want to grow from this experience. Would you be willing to help me figure out steps to handle this type of situation better? Like, there's just I don't even remember how many questions they were. I'll just guess maybe like 15. And you have to pick question A or B. And then at the end, it kind of tells you what they think your apology language is. And let me just briefly share kind of a summary of what they say the 5 apology languages are. 1, expressing regret. And that would be that they need to hear that you understand that you wronged them and that you feel bad and regret it. Accepting responsibility. Drop the excuses. Own up to what you did. Don't try to justify it. Making restitution. This is more action-oriented, where they know you're making solid effort to not repeat your mistakes. Genuinely repenting. This is where you can maybe explain why you did what you did. Not necessarily for an excuse, but just so that you can explain it. And requesting forgiveness. And this is an important step to most people, to ask for forgiveness and wait for it. So I've also heard genuinely repenting can also be like planned change, because it's like I understand what I did wrong, and here's what I'm going to do to fix it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There was actually a few Reddit threads on this, and they were using genuinely repenting instead of planned change.
Oh, interesting.
So there was a couple different things. Anyways, there are 5 apology languages, and when you take the quiz, you get a score. So the first thing I thought would be interesting is if we all shared what it said that our apology language was and what the percentages were. So who wants to go first?
Well, I'll go ahead and go. I was a little bit like Steve because 2 of them I got almost the same percentage or really close. And it's because I think I had trouble telling how different they were. So my top one was expressing regret. So I'm basically looking for somebody to say, I'm really sorry, And then the next one was request forgiveness. So I'm sorry, please forgive me. And then accepting responsibility was next. Then planned changed was low. And then really low was making restitution. I only had 8% on that one.
Yeah. I only had 8% on that one too, Julia.
Oh, nice.
All right. So what were your percentages of the other ones?
Actually 32% on the regret, 24 on the forgiveness and accepting responsibility. Both of those are 24. Then 12 on plan change and 8 on make restitution.
Okay. All right. And Mindy, what was your score? What was your profile?
All right. Let's see. So I had 36% request forgiveness, 32% express regret. And then I dropped to 16% with accept responsibility, 12% make restitution, and only 4% plan change. Like I could care less what you plan to do with it. I thought that was funny.
Yeah. No, that definitely is funny. Okay. My top one was accept responsibility. The first thing I want to hear is, I know that I did that, or that's my fault, or I shouldn't have done that, or whatever. Like accept responsibility and then express regret. And those are basically tied for me. One was 28% and one was 24%. Then requesting forgiveness, plan change very low, only at 16%, and make restitution at 8%. Like make restitution, that doesn't even occur to me most of the time.
It's funny what you said about Steve, Marie, because when I had Bryce take the quiz, he was like, I feel like I'm at the eye doctor. It's like this one or this one, this one or this one. And so he felt like there wasn't, it was very subtle.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if this is true of men in general or just the men that I know, but I don't think they really care about the specifics as long as there's probably an attempt at some apology. I don't think they're analyzing the language. Now, there probably are people that are, but like a lot of the language sounds the same to them. Whereas the women I know, it's like, no, there's a very distinct difference between these two statements.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's talk about what your perfect apology is. Like, what do you like to hear people say?
Well, for me, it's I'm really sorry. And then name it specifically. Like, I think you should say what you're sorry for, not just, I'm really sorry. I was wrong. I could have done that better, whatever, the regret, and then it was my fault. Will you please forgive me? So it's kind of like step by step down that list. And on the other hand, I think really the ideal apology probably should incorporate all of these eventually, like that would be the perfect apology. But for me, I was thinking about why the restitution part was so low. I don't think I want to hear that at the beginning. I think it's like if the apology is sincere, then the plan change and the restitution is just going to come. Like it would seem a little empty if somebody just made a bunch of promises without saying the rest,
Yeah.
So I think that's why those just don't rank really high with me.
I know. I think I would say my perfect apology is similar. If somebody were to say, hey, I'm really sorry I hurt you. Will you please forgive me? It's simple. It's short words, but the sincerity of that and those specific words, mean a lot to me. Ironically, so Bryce's apology language was very different. And so he was like, when I sent him my results and he sent me his, and we were it was pretty funny, like our discussion about it, because we've been married such a long time. exactly what yours was going to be. And so he kept saying that my results meant you had to beg for forgiveness.
Oh.
like, like, like beg over and over. I'm like, no, it's in the sincerity. You don't get it. And he's like,
Yeah.
he actually, his highest was make restitution. Like, and so, and I knew that because the words, I'm sorry, please forgive me, are actually that important to him. So I know that because that's not how he apologized.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So what is my perfect apology? I was trying to think of like a simple example from around the house. And I guess, I would want to hear someone say, I'm sorry for snapping at you. I shouldn't have taken my anger out on you. And I'm sorry I made you feel badly. Will you forgive me? Just own it. Say you're sorry. I'm not even looking for you to say I won't do that again, because you totally will. And I will too. Like, okay, let's not pretend that we're never going to snap at each other. But let's just say that we're sorry about it and move on, and not like say I'm snapping at you because this, that, and the other built up over the last 30 minutes. Oh, those things may be true and can come after apologizing. But first, I just want to simply hear, I'm sorry I did it. I shouldn't have taken my anger out on you. Sorry I made you feel bad. Will you forgive me? Like, and then a 45-minute argument could be avoided.
It's like a clean slate.
Yes.
Yeah. We were talking about what our perfect apology is. Can we talk about an apology that we don't like to hear?
Oh, sure. Yes. Let's talk about it very much. Okay.
Yes. Well, any apology that comes with a modifier like if, like, I'm sorry if you were offended. I'm sorry you feel that way, because that puts problem more on me. It's like you're putting the problem on the person instead of what they did. And then the one that I really don't like is, I'm sorry, I was only joking.
No.
That's not a good excuse. And tone is very important. It's never good to go, I'm sorry. Because that, and I know I've done that before. It's like you just want it to end. You just want it to be over. And then I don't like to hear like, oh, I'll never do that again. Or, because you're right. People will, So that's not something I'd want to hear.
Yeah. I can't find it right now, but somewhere in my research, it talked about apologies that like we hear that are like bad examples, like ones that we've heard before in the media, like mistakes were made. Okay, by who? Mistakes were made? Okay, let's have an ownership of who made them, how they affected people, not just a blanket mistakes were made. Okay.
Right. Or just two words I don't want to hear are my bad.
Right.
Oh.
I mean, unless it's just like
a silly thing.
If that's actually a sincere, statement coming from my teenager, I will accept that.
Yeah. Or another example was basically like, I'm sorry that you're so sensitive. Okay.
Ooh.
It's not because I'm so sensitive. It's because you said something that was hurtful. Like, don't imply that it's the other person's sensitivity that is the reason that it's a problem.
I would say probably the worst apology for me is to use my same perfect apology language, but to be sarcastic and not be sincere. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if somebody were to say, well, gosh, I'm sorry, forgive me, and it's like, you're not sorry. Like,
right.
You're saying the words, but your attitude is totally wrong.
Yes.
Or if you parrot it back like a robot with no sincere eye contact, no sincere inflection, no gentle touch of the other person's arm, like nothing. Like, okay, you said the words, but I think we all, well, at least the women I've talked to, we know when the sincere note has been hit.
That's right.
And we are waiting for the sincere note. We've heard it over and over again. Like, we've practiced this with our kids. Like, repeat it. repeat it. Like, no, I don't hear any sense. Like we know it when we hear it.
Right. I think we talked about how maybe the planned change is pretty far down the list because each of us kind of know it's going to happen again if it's these kind of daily offenses that we're talking about. And so honestly, one of the worst apologies or the make restitution, like when I read the quiz and one of the statements was, well, can you help me think about how I could change my behavior? I'm like, I don't want to tell you what you need to be doing. I am not your mother. Like if this is like a friendship relationship or spouse, like I don't want to actually be the one to help you think of ways to do better. Like that's on you.
I thought the same thing. It's like, I can't take on you too.
Yeah. I got my own
working
baggage.
on myself. I can't take on you.
I know. I thought that was ridiculous. Like, don't turn this around as an assignment for me.
Right. You can tell we're all done. We're all like, I'm tired.
Yeah. But probably Julie's thing about if is like, should be just struck from every apology. I even hear this sometimes in the media when they have like a politician apologize. And I think, who wrote that? Have they never read a women's magazine? Like, I feel like this has been out in the media forever. Never say, I'm sorry if I hurt you, or they'll often say, I'm sorry if I offended someone. Okay, take out the if because you've already negated your entire apology because you obviously don't think you did because you said
because you're that completely says that you don't believe that you did. You're just hoping to cover anybody out there that you might have offended. Yeah. I also don't like to hear I'm sorry, but because something's coming. Like, but you started it, but
right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. It puts it back on you. Now, Bryce did point out something to me though. He said, even though the planned change was very low on my list, he said, if the offense is really bad, you actually want that. And so then we talked through scenarios and we've just talked about that here, but I could see that also as a parent that, there are certain behaviors. If there's something in your home that's happening and it's a repeated offense and there may be some need for some more intensive language there.
Like if it's of a serious nature, you might want to develop a plan, to not let that keep happening. So, and John and I had talked before about like, if it was something that I felt like I'm always apologizing for, it's like,
oh yeah,
how can we learn to nip this in the bud? You know what I mean? Like kind of trying to find ways to prevent it.
Right.
So like we did work on that some.
Yeah, some things are a well-worn path in long relationships.
Yeah. Well, how did you teach your kids to apologize? Or if you can remember, how were you taught to apologize? But anyways, what did apologies look like in your home?
I just remember trying to move past the simple I'm sorry. Because, when you have your kids say, I'm sorry, it never sounded sincere. It's like, I'm sorry. And it was very forced. And you can't make somebody feel sincere.
Right.
But so we moved to I was wrong for, and then they had to state it, will you forgive me? And and that often came out many, many times feeling very forced, but we hoped that we were developing the language for a good apology. Right. And the goal was to help them see their responsibility or fault when they hurt somebody.
I'd have to say we were similar in having the children sit down. It was, I'm sorry for this. And usually both people were wrong or multiple people. So everyone had to say like, I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry for this. Will you forgive me? Will you forgive me? And so it was stating what they did wrong and then seeking forgiveness from the other person. And of course it was forced for years. And similar to Julie, we just hoped that language was embedded in them when an offense was, done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I tried to get people to hug, but after a certain age, it was, they're little, they will hug, but as they get older, they're like, no.
See, I was afraid a fight was going to break out if they touched.
Too close contact.
I thought this was an interesting one. Someone put in a comment that I read that they teach 4th through 8th grade students with, in quotes, behavior problems. And so they have an apology form that the kid has to fill out. And it says, I blank, so their name, I blank apologize for doing blank. I understand that my actions made you feel blank. I did not mean to, and I'm sorry. In the future, I will blank to make sure it doesn't happen again. I am really sorry. I thought that was so good. Like, we all need this form.
Yes, we do. Please post that. That is so thorough, very thorough. Hits every part of the apology quiz.
Yes, it really does. And she said that by the end of the year, they don't need the form anymore. Like, they just know what they have to say. And is it always super sincere? No, but a lot of times with practice, you do get to be more sincere about that. And I think that's really, really good.
Okay, Mindy, I want to ask you, since Bryce's apology language is pretty much different than all of ours and our husband's, what kind of apology is he looking for? Not on like some serious big issue, but just like, you hurt his feelings with something you said. Like, what kind of apology would he be looking for?
All right. So his top 2, the first was make restitution, and the second was expressing regret. Which was actually closely followed by request forgiveness. So ironically, I think that Bryce is looking for, I'm sorry this hurt you and this caused you pain and it messed up your day at work or something like that. Like, is there some way that I can make that up to you? Whatever was lost, he wants it to be found. And so obviously a sincere request for forgiveness, but expressing regret and then trying to replace what was lost. Okay. In a sense. So what do you guys think? I know this is a squirrel that I'm chasing, but what do you think about don't let the sun go down on your anger?
I mean, I think it's a good general rule, but like anything else, if you're going to have a long marriage, there's going to be times that you went to bed mad. I don't know.
Right.
John took that very literally, and we would stay up till 4 a.m. to hash it out. Like, this is gonna.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember even just like we'd be on our way to a party and we would be in an argument. Well, we'd park in the driveway and was like, I'd be getting out.
Right.
Like, no, we're not getting out. We're right in the middle of this argument. Like, how can we just forget this? I could have totally compartmentalized it, gone to the party, and then picked it up when we got back in the car. Yeah. He could not.
No.
Right.
So we just sit and finished this argument in front of everybody walking by.
Nice. Yeah. We'll be in at maybe.
Yeah. A couple hours.
Yeah.
I'd have to say one of the things we've learned over the years is that sometimes we need to go to sleep. Nothing good is coming of this conversation. We're both tired. We both still feel very strongly about our opinions. And we almost just need to like pray and go to sleep and ask the Lord to fight for us while we're asleep. And then in the morning, it's almost like we're ready to talk. I don't know, like we need that break. We need the Lord to really fight for a marriage for us and then help us to come back together. And honestly, that's been something nice because when we've tried to stay up when we were younger, it just didn't lead anywhere good.
Yeah. And that is coming to an agreement of some kind.
It is. It is like, yeah, we need a break. I love you. Okay. Yeah, I definitely love you. I don't like you right now. I need to go to sleep.
So that kind of leads us into our question of, do you and your husband have different apology languages? When Steve took the quiz, he actually had very similar, at least top 2 to mine, which I was absolutely shocked, which is why I am surprised that our fights go so long. And they're usually about me saying that I don't hear a sincere apology. And I feel like I've been accused of being slow to forgive. Have you guys ever been accused of being slow to forgive? Well, yeah, Mindy, you said that Bryce thinks you have to beg.
Yes. Yes. And I'm like, no, I don't need anything else. I don't want flowers. I don't want space. I really want to like conquer this, but I need to hear a sincere apology. And it's so simple. And he's like, I'm not sure what you want.
Was John good at hitting the sincere apology note, Julie?
Yeah, and I think we had a similar desire for like expressing regret, seeking forgiveness. I will say he was always the first one to apologize.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we pretty much wanted the same thing. Like, I'm really sorry I hurt you. Will you forgive me? And I do remember getting flowers on some occasions like that. And I think it's another step we could take is learning to recognize, like what you said, Marie, like, oh, they're starting with the restitution. Like, at least give them credit. Like, instead of that's not what I need, it's like, well, this is their attempt. And then, like, thank you for the flowers, but I also need this or whatever.
Let me tell you something fun that I'm so thankful for now. So apology language really kind of goes along with the 5 love languages, because we all want to feel loved in the way that we speak love. And I think the apology leads to that. And so something that is a really great hack now is that Bryce knows my love language. And so if we're at a place where we've been, nitpicky with each other, sometimes to move on, like if he starts cleaning the kitchen, you guys, I'm just like, okay, absolutely. Yes, I forgive you.
I'm willing to accept that form of restitution.
He's doing he's doing an act of service. And if like cleaning the kitchen or putting the dishes away or, like just doing something extra that maybe he doesn't typically do over and above what he's always done in the house to help me keep it up, that is the best.
Yeah, that's really true that they're linked.
Well, yeah. And what you said, Julie, about the flowers, like this apology can make us think of apologies in a different way. And I do think that this was kind of a light bulb for me. Like, can you think of any interactions that were apologies in hindsight, but they didn't feel like an apology at the time?
I really couldn't think of a very specific example, but I feel like this has probably happened. Like if someone maybe forgot me, like we had a lunch date and they stood me up because they forgot. I wouldn't want to hear, oh, the next time we go, I'm going to make it up. You know what I mean? Like to me, that wouldn't be the apology. I'd rather just hear it was totally my fault. I missed it. Please forgive me,
Yeah.
And I think people have tried to in the past maybe make it up with things like they were going to do differently. And I just missed that. But I now understand that would be their attempt at apologizing.
Yes.
Yeah. I can't think of an exact example, but I'm sure that has happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I'm thinking of like, if someone hasn't been able to attend a big event, but they'll say, but I'm sending a really nice gift. But they didn't really say like, hey, I'm so sorry I can't come to this. I'm really sorry to miss it. But it's like, oh, we're sorry, we're going to be out of town, but I'm sending a really nice gift. Now I think, well, maybe they lead with restitution. Like they feel like that is their apology. I know it makes me think of restitution differently because I didn't even really recognize restitution because it's so far down on my list of like things that I ever think of or do. Like I feel like I maybe should be better about restitution. Like who am I? Who doesn't feel apologized to in my life because I don't think about restitution? Like, I don't think about, oh, I hurt their feelings, so I'll buy this little gift for them or I'll take them out to lunch.
Well, I think what Mindy said is thinking about the love languages. Like if their love language is gift giving or acts of service, then those would be great ways to try to make up for what happened. Yeah.
Right.
Now I'm going to be more aware in the future. Like even planned change, like sometimes Steve will be like, oh, I'm going to do it this way, or let's think of some ways. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that because first of all, planned change never works. Like people mess up again. Like I don't want to have to be someone's accountability or hold them to something. Now, if it was a serious thing like infidelity or something like that, then yeah, you've got to have a big plan change and you better be on that. But if it's like snapping at each other or, using your phone and ignoring someone when they're trying to have a conversation with you, like things that happen in everyday life, they just don't necessarily need like this big, long plan change thing. But maybe that's someone's apology language and I shouldn't be so dismissive of plan change.
Well, I can remember some times of like where John would apologize for something that had hurt me. And it was when you said about the phone thing, like I feel ignored when you're looking at your screen, and he was like, Julie, sometimes I'm reading a book. I'm not on my phone, Like if I had a book here, would you be saying that? It's like, no, probably not. And so he would say, would you just say, "Hey, John, like put your phone down?" And he would, he wanted that,
Right.
like he needed to know it was bothering me.
Right.
And so we agreed to that. It's like, okay.
Actually, that's a really good point, Julie, is sometimes we get upset and we don't really know why. It might be hard to express why we're upset. And so I know Bryce really appreciates if I can verbalize what hurt me or what, hurt my feelings or why I'm upset, because I may not know. And so I do feel that sometimes being able to even verbalize, like, well, it hurt when you said this, or it hurt when you did that. And then processing why that hurt your feelings and being able to verbally express.
I have a situation that I don't really know where this fits in because this hasn't been brought up, but one way that John and I were different, and I know he did not like this as a form of apology. If I kind of beat myself up for what I said or did, he was like, "That's not what I'm looking for. Like, I don't have to hear that." And I wasn't doing it to make the apology more real or whatever. That was my reaction. But I realized that was also bringing the focus back onto me,
Okay.
not staying on the point, And he was like, "That doesn't make me feel good to hear you beating yourself up over it. Like, that's not what I need from this."
Right.
And I thought that was interesting. And I've had other people do that. And it's like, yeah, that's not a good thing. You don't want that from other people.
Right.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Me too.
You don't want
I'm
them
sure
to feel.
I've probably done it, but I notice it when other people do it, but I probably don't notice it when I do it. But it's hard. Like you think you're expressing your deep remorse by saying what a terrible person you are and how you can never do anything right and you messed up again. And honestly, that's just too much. Like the other person is just looking for you to be sorry about what you did in that instance, not your whole life.
Because that's probably exactly what I said, was like, I never do anything right. I'm always wrong or whatever. Like, and he was like, "No, that's not what I'm going for. Like, let's just talk about this one thing."
Yeah. Because at that point you're looking for the person you've wronged to encourage you,
Right.
tell you you're a great person. So that's not really the point of an apology.
Right. Well, Julie, you saw an article that you sent us, and how did you feel like it related to this?
Well, right after you sent the article with the quiz, I saw an article in Christianity Today called "Bible Figures Never Say I'm Sorry." So I thought, oh, I've got to read this because it seemed like a coincidence that this topic of apologies seemed to be everywhere. I don't know, and they just said that a lot of times. And see if you guys agree that people can be grieved into repentance. Like, I truly feel sorry for what I did and I feel bad. But that doesn't necessarily imply that they're accepting the blame. Like they're sorry for how you feel, but maybe they don't think that what they did was wrong, or they might admit their own failure and take responsibility for it, but that doesn't mean that you're going to see a change in behavior. And so the article, I think the point of the article was just that the Bible, that scripture can give like a richer vocabulary to this, and it's about repentance. And that's one thing in the 5 apology languages, they never used that word. Like you said that plan change could be repentance, but I just think that is a richer word because repent means to actually change your mind about something and turn from it. That's when you really know that the person, I think the sincerity comes through when you see the change behavior.
Yeah.
You asked the question of, can you be sorry but then not change? Yeah, I can be sorry. And I could even be like beating myself up that I lost my temper again. But there's no way I can say, well, I'll just never lose my temper again.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think you have to say never. Like if it's a maybe a common rut, like you said, a well-worn path, Mindy, I don't know. I think I've, when it was a certain issue and we had to hash it out, that I did see an attempt to change. I did see progress.
Yes.
And not just like blowing it off every single time it happened. Like, oh, I'm really sorry. Like it was,
Yeah.
I saw progress. And it's just like that with God. Like if I
Yeah.
thought I could never do something again, I would never go to God and say, I really repent. I want to change. Like I think you can make progress without being perfect.
Right.
I guess like recognizing that progress in these areas is slow. Like they could be decades. Like maybe you are losing your temper less than you did 5 years ago, or you regain your equilibrium quicker, or
or you catch yourself quicker.
Yeah,
you
catch
recognize
yourself
it.
quicker. Or I feel like a lot of family life is so over and over and over again that making change is also slow.
Yeah, I think it's about progress. And maybe this is more geared towards specific grievances, like bigger things.
I like if you had a habitual problem with lying, okay, well, we can't just take the next 10 years to slowly get better at not lying. Like there needs to be a plan in place and you need to stop lying.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, or like,
Yes.
making fun of me in public or putting me down in public, like something that was really, really hurtful, or, things that are more of a serious nature.
But don't you guys think that every relationship, no matter friendship, spouse, your mother, your sibling, like everybody fights, I'll say fights in like air quotes, like disagrees in a specific way. And so some people will get silent. Some people will throw stones. Some people will, you know what I mean? Like make every excuse in the book. I feel like there is a way that we disagree with one another that you have to almost get on the same page with even how you argue so that you can speak the same language and come to a point of forgiveness and turning.
Julie, this is just out of curiosity, but since you grew up as an only child, was apologizing and getting in fights within a family, do you think, harder for you?
Probably, yeah. Because there was no fighting
in your primary house before you got married.
Yeah, like between me anyway, and then I do remember this one instant because I always, being an only child, I always wanted a friend on vacation or whatever. So, and my parents usually were good at that. I took a friend everywhere we went. And I remember, this was just going to be the best beach vacation ever. And I got in the worst fight with my friend. And I did not like her. I wish she wasn't there. I wanted her to go home. Yeah. And then and my dad had to sit down. I remember he talked to both of us. I remember him working through the apology and forgiving each other. And that really stood out in my mind because that just didn't, that had never happened before. And I was probably like 8 or 9.
Right.
Because at that point she was like a sibling, because she was in our household, like on this trip.
Right. Yeah. I'm thinking of like, I'm not afraid of a fight. Like, I don't feel like a fight means we're not going to be friends anymore, or we're not going to be family anymore, or we're not going to ever get along or have fun together. Like, I'm not afraid of a fight. I understand that fights come and go, and that in a household, there's going to be fights because I grew up with 3 brothers and sisters. But I think sometimes, like, especially when we first got married, Steve had a brother, but he was almost 5 years older, and they hardly had any fights, really. He would perceive us getting in a fight as, like we probably won't make it. Whereas I'm just like, well, no, that's just you're working things out.
Yeah, right. No, I was more like with Steve. I thought, oh my gosh, like, I don't know how to handle this. I've never seen this. What does this mean? Because you don't have a basis for what's normal.
Right. Right. Yeah. I know Bryce and I entered marriage and our families handled arguments extreme opposites. And so for him and I to get on the same page, we really had to learn how to respectfully disagree and speak up with respectfully disagreeing. And it's funny, we kind of termed something when we were, our kids were younger, and we wouldn't completely hide every argument. I actually thought that was a little bit unhealthy. I thought our kids needed to see us disagree respectfully and come to an agreement respectfully, because they needed to see that work itself out. Like, this is normal. You're not going to agree with everybody, but that's not the end of the world. You have to work through it. And so sometimes when Bryce and I would disagree, we would just term that like, we're just keeping it real.
Mm-hmm.
because that was very real. And so with each of our kids, as they hit an age of, Abby's now married, Grant would like to be married one day, Jacob's about to go to college. Like, we're talking about these relationships, and they're wanting to have these long-term, spouse, like Bryce and I. And, one of the conversations we always have is there will be disagreements. It's how you get through that, that really makes a difference. Do you still come to the same page, and really just allowing the Lord to fight for you? But keeping it real.
Yeah. And just assuring your kids, like, it's okay.
Yes.
If you've had a big fight, like assuring them that this is normal. People disagree. 'Cause I know our kids I think that made them nervous too. I don't know, because I typically clammed up. And so most of our arguments were over our argument style.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm serious. Like, I clammed up, and that just made John more and more frustrated because he just wanted to be able to talk it out. And I didn't. I needed, 3 days to process, internal processor. And it got to be, he was like, can you just tell me that? Can you just say something?
Yes.
Like, you've heard me, I'm in the room. You know that I'm upset. And I at first I thought, this is the silliest thing. Like, doesn't he know me by now? Like, I wanted him to just know this, like, doesn't he know I need a few days to process, or hours, or whatever? And he's till the very end, he still needed me to tell him that.
Yeah. Julie, you and I are like the same person. We've had to grow through that.
And as the external processor, I'm thinking to myself, it's so much healthier just to have a little disagreement about it than it is to keep it all buried and try to figure it out in my head. I'd rather just say what's on my mind.
That was John.
Marie, I've had to come to that place. I really have. I do think that that's healthier, actually, Marie. I really do. And so telling the kids, even like disagreeing with someone, like that can be a very loving thing. You care about them. You're passionate about them. You want your relationship to be better. And sometimes it takes a disagreement to get there.
Obviously, we're never going to be done with learning how to apologize. I know I can do a better job. I think this quiz was really great. We'll put a link in our show notes for listeners if you want to take the quiz and figure out what kind of apology language you have. We would love to know what you think about this. You can find us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast, or you can email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. But before we go, we want to do I'm a Fan. All right, Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
All right. I'm probably not the only one, but I am a huge fan of the Olympics right now.
Yes.
I happen to have a free afternoon yesterday, and it just so happened that it was the women's gymnastics team winning the gold. I got to watch every event. I was so excited. It brought me back to childhood, different gymnasts. I saw Nadia Comaneci in the audience, and she used to be my favorite gymnast. She was the first woman to receive a perfect 10 in the Olympics in gymnastics. So huge fan of the Olympics right now.
Oh, that's awesome, Mindy. And I know Julie is right there with you.
Yeah, it's like we watch every night, 7 to 10, and I'm going to miss it when it's gone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's good. All right, Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
All right, I'm the fan of something that I probably am the only one.
Oh.
That's a fan of this. Okay, if you know anything about me, you know that perfume and scents are very important to me. And I have shared my favorite perfume that I have loved for years. And I always get compliments, even like waiters at restaurants say, what is that? And they ask me about it. So I had been out, so I ordered some more, and I made the mistake. Well, I ordered it from Amazon.
Oh.
And when I got it, I couldn't smell it. I mean, I could smell it for a second, and then it went away, and then I didn't think it smelled the same. I didn't like it. So I asked to return it, and I said, I think this is a fake.
Yeah.
Because I had read that sometimes that, like, even if you might get a real bottle and then they mix in, fake bottles, so you just never know what you're going to get. The bottle looked the same. It was from the manufacturer, store on Amazon. So I don't know. So then I started digging deeper and reading into it, and people are like, no, the scent has changed. We think the scent has changed.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I went to Nordstrom before I reordered because they sell this perfume, and I smelled it in the store and I didn't like it. I couldn't smell it.
Oh.
And so I thought, okay, I remembered a perfume I wore in college that I absolutely loved, and they had quit making it. And so I Googled that name because it was kind of a obscure one. And I see all these people, these other people wanting to find this perfume. And I found this place called Fragrance Revival.
Oh.
And they made perfumes that had been discontinued.
Interesting.
And so I looked at it and they said, we guarantee, like, if you don't like it, you don't have to buy it. You know, you can just return it. And they said the perfume I picked, though, was like their top three, one in their top three sellers. And so I got this little card. I got the perfume. It says we're a family-owned business. Each fragrance is handmade in America. We spend countless hours perfecting our recipes. If there's any reason you're unhappy, you just email us and we'll do our best to make it right. We want you to be happy. And then they all signed it.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
y'all, the perfume smells exactly like the original. I mean, I'm just amazed that they can do that. Like if my other perfume doesn't smell the same, like why can't they keep it the same?
Mm-hmm.
And then this company can remanufacture something that they probably don't have the formula for. They're just doing it by
that's amazing.
by scent. Well, and you think, okay, if they're manufacturing this one bottle for you, the price would be ridiculous. It was the same price as my other perfume.
That's interesting.
Oh my.
And they said they'll
resource.
even make a perfume for you if you describe, which I could never do.
Yeah. That's interesting. All right. I don't have like a specific link to anything I'm a fan of, but I am a fan of doing a nagging project. So I have my own closet in this house and I love it. I've never had my own closet. I've always had to share with Steve. And so it doesn't matter really how messy I keep it. It doesn't matter how messy he keeps his because we don't have to share anymore. But what happens to me is when I have zero accountability, I fall into more of a mess. So my closet was, kind of messy. And also like when I moved in, this one section didn't have shelving and it didn't even have like a bar where I could hang things. So I just stacked a bunch of like hiking boots and like stuff that I didn't really use that often and knew that I wouldn't get to them for a while. And you know how you end up with piles in your house and you're like, oh, this pile has lived here for 9 months. I actually look at it and don't even see it anymore. Like I had several piles in my closet. And I thought, you know what? I bet they make shelves that I could just order on the internet to fit this closet system. And so I just Googled it and they do. And they were standard sizes and I just ordered the shelves and they were maybe like $35 each. And I thought, yeah, man, I'm going to spend like $100 and some on shelves for this closet, which seemed like, do I even really need it? But I thought, no, I'm tired of looking at these piles. I'm going to live here for a long time. It will drastically improve my organization if I can actually get things up off the floor. So I don't know. I guess just Google what your nagging problem is. Yep. And there's probably a solution out there for not a ton of money for the payback that I'll get. And I just am enjoying walking into a closet that has things off the floor, on a shelf. Like, it's a nice feeling.
So they just kind of fit in with pegs? Is that how? Or like,
Yes. Okay. And they're just like the closet systems that like that white melamine shelving, and you just measure it and order it. And it even said free returns if it didn't work. So I was like, there's nothing really to lose here. And now I'm doing another section because I thought, I could have some shelves over here too. Like, I don't know. It's just, it makes me feel good that it was so relatively easy.
Yeah.
That's
Google
great.
is our friend.
Yes.
I mean, that's how I Googled like what perfume do people like that wore this. And that's how I found it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are little nagging problems that can be solved by just doing a little bit of research.
Yeah.
Just Google it.
Yeah. So, all right, you guys. Well, I enjoyed this discussion. And if I ever do have to apologize to you, I will keep this in mind. All right. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.